Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to today's video on overcoming anxiety. Now, I wanted to talk to you about anxiety because this is a huge problem that we have just got used to living with. Like, you might struggle with anxiety and it's just become part of how you live. You don't even realize you're struggling with it half the time, except that sometimes you notice it when you're noticing the reactions in your body. You might find that your palms are sweaty. You might find that your stomach churns. You might find your heart racing at different times. You might find yourself feeling sick in the stomach or actually having to go to the toilet, when something is happening and it's really causing you anxiety. And so anxiety is often what's felt in the body, right? You can really feel it in the body. Your heart races, your palms sweat. You might even get a headache. So if you're feeling these sort of, symptoms and you're living with them, you've lived with them most of your life, we can often just get used to it. And it's just something that we live with. It's just who you are. But I wanted to talk about this today because I want to help you understand that anxiety in itself is a symptom of a problem that is affecting our lives that needs to be dealt with. You see, anxiety is the fear of what's going to go wrong, right? And many people, most people live their lives with the fear of what's going to go wrong. And we take it as part and parcel of life. We just get on with it. We cope with the symptoms. We ignore the symptoms. We just try and move on. But what happens when you don't, when those symptoms just get worse and worse over time? What happens when the anxiety becomes actually part of you and you feel like you've just become someone who's very negative? You're always feeling the worst. You're always worried about what's going to go wrong. And you just, because of that, your family start noticing that you're quite negative in your outlook. You don't want to take, chances. Something might go wrong, opportunities will come your way, and no, and you become quite protective. You might find as well, because you're quite anxious, you're always fearing, you're always on eggshells, you're always walking on eggshells around people, fearing, what they might say, how they might react, what might happen, what might go wrong. And as I'm saying this, and if these are your thoughts, you're probably going to start feeling the impact of those thoughts on your body. Like, you probably can feel it, right? Like the anxiety rise up in your body. How does it affect you when you feel anxious? Where do you feel it in your body? It's quite good to recognize where you feel it, because when you feel it, you can then realize, that's telling me that I'm worried about something. That's telling me that actually, there's something that is scaring me, because often we live with it. We don't question it. But why it's really important to not live with anxiety and not just, make it a normal part of your life is because when you are in the state of anxiety, remember, you're always in fear of something happening. That's what it really does. And so now when I'm like you, I will have it. I am sometimes, time to time, something will happen and I become quite scared of the future. I'm worried about what might happen. A moment of dread, a moment of like, and I'll feel it in my body. But now I've become used and I've become more in tune with my body. And so even if I don't realize what I'm worried about, because I move on to the next thing, I am aware of what's happening in my body more and more. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, right. I've got some fear here. And I don't let that fear, I don't let myself run away with that fear, because when you let fear overtake your life, it really sabotages your life. And I'll talk to you about that in a moment. It can really sabotage your life. And the reason why we don't want that is, one, we don't want to sabotage our life. We want like the best life ever, alhamdulillah. Like Allah gave us the opportunity to have an amazing life. And we want to have an amazing life. We don't want to live with anxiety. We want to overcome it and get rid of it. But also because that is not the way of the Muslim. Like, the way of the Muslim, the way that we are told to live our life when we think about the future, is to have hope, right? To have hope in Allah. That's a very different state of mind from fear in what would go wrong. And because we never stop to really talk about anxiety, I'm sure you've never thought of it this way. Like, of course we want to live with hope in Allah. Throughout the Quran, Allah SWT talks about hope in Allah. Even the last ayah of Surah Kahf is about having hope in Allah and the last day. Like we should be of the people who live in hope. But that is the opposite state to anxiety. In fact, Shaitan loves to induce in our hearts, fear, despair, hopelessness. That's how he actually starts, leading you towards disbelief, etc. Because when you've lost hope, then you've lost hope in everything. There's no point in going forward anymore. You just want to give up. There's just no point. And you might hear yourself saying that. The more that you struggle with anxiety, the more you struggle with fear of the future, and the more and more and more you become hopeless. So we don't want to go down that route. We want to actually knock that on its head and say, no, I'm not going to live with fear. Yes, stuff can go wrong. But what about when you have hope in Allah? Even when something doesn't go your way, you have hope that there is goodness in it, regardless of whether you got the outcome you wanted. Things will happen. We will be tested. Sometimes things happen that you don't expect will happen. Sometimes they happen you didn't want it to happen. Sometimes something will happen and you really feel that loss. But can you still have hope that there is goodness in it for you? That there is something better that Allah SWT is giving you, that even if Allah took something away, he gives you something better. Even if, you go through something now, that there isn't something better waiting for you, just ahead of it and in the afterlife. Of course, we can have hope. So it doesn't mean, having hope means that we're deluded that things are always going to go our way. Although we should expect the best from Allah. Allah SWT tells us that we should always expect the best of him. He is as we expect he will be for us. So we should expect the best. But that means even when things aren't going the way you want to. And we often miss that distinction. There's either fear or expecting it to always go well. And neither is the way of the dunya, right? Neither is the way of the believer, because there's always, ease and hardship. There's always going to be good and bad. There's always going to be opportunity as well as loss. So you really want to think about, which way do you want to live? Because this is really the decision to make. Do I want to continue living in fear? Or do I want to live in hope and good expectation of Allah? And also from a place of, hope that even if it doesn't go as I plan, even if it doesn't go as I had expected, that I have the best of expectation of my Lord, that even in that, Allah is giving me something better. Like if you change your the way you live to this place, you can only just thrive and do well. But if you don't change the way you live, and this is a way of living, this is, the way we think is the way we live. If we don't change that direction, then we're going to end up really sabotaging our lives. And let me give you a few examples. So, what you might find is, I mentioned it already, you're not expecting any good. You have no hope that things will get better. So when Allah SWT sends you opportunities, you don't even realize, or you see it and you think it's not going to work. You see an opportunity and you think, of all the reasons why it's not going to work, instead of actually thinking about the reasons why this is going to work, this is going to help. This is what you've been asking for. Like, we might not realize it, that we do that, but we close the doors of opportunity. Because we don't expect good. We're always expecting the worst, so we don't expect good, and that means we end up saying no to amazing opportunities that could come your way. And sometimes we get so lost in not even in such despair that we may not even see that a door of opportunities come before us. We may not even realize it. So what you do want to do is you want to live in hope, and the best expectation of Allah. And that will mean that you're always on the lookout. Like, what's Allah sending me? What opportunity is Allah giving me today? What good is coming my way? That is the way we want to live. The second way that we will sabotage ourselves with anxiety is because you're always looking at the worst case scenario. You become quite negative, right? Like you feel quite negative in yourself. You see the negative in others. Because if you expect the worst for yourself, you're naturally your mind's going to be programmed that way to show you the negativity in others too. And so, you know, and you'll know this because your kids might say to you, oh, you're always complaining. You never see the good I do. You know, you're always expecting the worst from me. That's telling you that that problem you're having in yourself and the way you see your life is actually now spilling out on your children. And it will naturally, right? We can't help that, because if that's what's in the heart, then that's what's going to show on the limb. So if that fear, if you're always in fear and seeing the worst case scenario, then what that looks like to your family is that you're very negative and pessimistic. And you might have heard them say that to you. What then happens is two things. Either they want to get a bit away from you, and you know that you hear that sometimes when people say, oh, you know, I don't want to be around negative people because it brings me down. Because we will mirror each other. We will feed off each other. Like, you know, if I'm in the company of someone who's negative, you know, I might feel you know, I might feel really negative, but actually quite often, because I know how to lead myself now, alhamdulillah, when I'm in the company of negative people, I help them feel positive because I stay where I am. I stay positive. And that means I have, like, you know, an amazing impact on those around me, alhamdulillah, because even if they feel low, they end up feeling positive by being in my company. That's what you want. But what that means is you've got to take control of your mind and the direction you're going in, right? Otherwise, you will feed off others, and your family might be feeding off your negativity. And so then what happens is we start to repel each other. You know, you make me feel worse. I'm already fearing the worst, and you make me feel worse. So then what happens is we start keeping a bit of a distance from each other, because, you know, all that negativity just makes us all feel bad. And so you might be sensing that everyone just kind of, you know, they don't really talk about anything. They don't really want to share anything. They don't, you know, come and share their good news too much, or is expecting you're going to, you know, find something wrong, you know, even in the good. And everyone might be doing that at home, because we end up mirroring each other. Unless someone leads, you know, everyone mirrors the negativity. So you might find that impact in your home. The third way that we often, and this is something really important to see, that we often sabotage our life, is that when we are fearing the worst, then that will affect the way that what you expect, not only from Allah, but from those around you. You know, instead of having expectations that, you know, I don't know, you and your husband are going to grow old together, you might be thinking, oh, you know what, he's going to get fed up with me. You know, I'm always stuck in this negativity. You know, he might just go and do his own thing. Or you might think that of your kids, like, oh, they just can't get away from me. You know, they can't wait to get away from me. They're just going to live their life and they're going to forget about me. Because we know that we're not in a good place with all this anxiety. And it's repelling, and therefore we can almost, you know, we're fearing the worst with that. Like, we can almost see what's going to happen in the future, and that you're going to end up on being on your own. You fear rejection, you fear the worst case scenario. And what we then do, and this is the sabotage part, because you can feel all of that, and the sabotage part there is where, because of that, what you do is you end up pushing others away, or you shut down, or you disconnect, you know, and you'll know this. You'll know if you're doing this, because in those relationships, it's like you can't be bothered anymore. You just can't be bothered. And what that's telling you is that you're almost living your worst case scenario. You're playing it out now. You fear that you're going to end up, you know, this separate, doing your own thing. They're going to reject you. And so ahead of time, you're already living as if you've been rejected. You might find yourself a bit moody. You might find yourself a bit agitated, because what your fear of the future becomes how you live now, and you're living in that fear. And when that happens, it's like the worst case scenario. There's, like, imagine two bubbles. Like, there's like your life and what's actually happening in the now, which is we might be getting a bit agitated with each other. But then there is in the future, you know, what you fear will happen. And you, in your mind, you're in that bubble, the one you're making up, what's going to happen. You're not in the, okay, here we are, this is the problem, let's just do something that's going to make us both feel really great and happy today. No, we're not dealing with the now. we're living as if the worst has happened. We're in that world and we're dealing with our loved ones from that place. You've already rejected me. You're not going to want me. You don't want me. And it hasn't happened. But we end up creating that, because what happens when we start acting like that? It does disconnect your relationship. So our worst fears is, you can end up making your worst fears happen. And just as you, because look, we can expect the good of Allah, and that's what we'll end up creating and getting and working towards, and taking those opportunities if we expect the best. Or if we expect the worst, then we're going to expect the worst, and start shutting things down. And then therefore we will get what we expect. And this is really important. I really wanted to talk about this today, so that you don't keep living with anxiety, that you realize it's not something you need to live with, that you don't have to, even have your mind, always showing you the worst case scenario. Do you know? Because I'm going to tell you that you can change. And I teach my clients how to do this, to reprogram their mind, so that instead of seeing the worst case scenario in everything, they see the hope in Allah, in everything. How would your life be different if you actually looked at your life like that? Everything that happened, your trials, your disappointments, your sadness, your opportunities. Imagine if you look at life like that. And when you take control of your mind, it means that, there's no room for waswas. There's no room. There's no room, because you're taking the lead. It's your mind, it's your life, it's your future, it's your akhirah. And we need to take control of that, and not allow these waswas and, or our own fears or our own experiences when we were a child to define what we now think is going to happen in our future. Your childhood does not define your future. Your sabotage, your circumstances, your disadvantages, however you look at it, your challenges, and that's why I say however you look at it, because I don't see disadvantage, I see opportunity. So that's why I say, even seeing disadvantage, that's just a way of looking at things. That's just a lens of looking at it. I see everything as an opportunity. Everything as an opportunity, because I have trained my mind like that. And I train my clients to do that. And it changes your life completely. You take all the opportunities. If you see a bit of negativity, you take that as an opportunity, to make things better. I'll give you an example. Even if I see, I don't know, my kids, having an issue with one, like one having an issue with another, for example, I won't sit there and think, oh my God, I really see they're not going to become close. You see, they're not going to, care about each other. When I'm gone, this family's falling apart. I won't have those thoughts now, because I've reprogrammed my mind. I did have them. I know what they're like. I've had anxiety, and I've ignored anxiety for many, many years. Alhamdulillah. But what I will see is something very different. I'll see, right, okay, this is great, because this was an issue that they were bottling up. Now they're getting it out, but let me help them. Let this be an opportunity for them to become closer. And then I'll get in and help them if I can, or if I need to be able to just, see what they need to see, or understand what they need to understand, so that it brings them closer. So therefore, whatever happens in your life that you don't want to happen, you no longer look at it like that, in that way, because things are going to happen that you didn't want to happen, or didn't plan to happen, because we all plan the perfect life. We all expect the perfect home. It's not going to happen. But can we grow through every challenge? Yes. And that's what really you want to have. You want to have, the best of expectations from Allah, and then and seek to grow through every part of your life. Your trials were not sent to break you. Your challenges were not here to destroy you and weaken you and make you give up. No. We are Muslims. We have hope in Allah. That's how we want to live. But we need to understand, and we need to, to how to take control of this anxiety and turn it around, how to reprogram our mind so that we're not dealing with this anymore. This is where we want to get to. And then life just gets better and better and better. And you have it all waiting for you, inshallah, because did we think that Allah would not send us opportunities? We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants best for us. We know that He wants us to, to be successful. So we should hope for that, work towards that, and take every opportunity that comes to create success, even if it's in something that you didn't want to happen, or if in what you were hoping would happen. Everything leads to success. That is a success mindset. So I hope that this has helped you in understanding that, number one, you don't have to live with anxiety, and you really do not want to live with anxiety. If it's become part of you, and that's how you've been for so long, you can change that. You don't want to carry on. You have a choice now. There is seeing clearly where anxiety takes you, right? And it takes you, towards despair. And that's not somewhere you want to be. It takes you to giving up. It takes you to rejection. Those are not the places we want to go to. So we don't want to have the worst case scenario lens of life. Or you take the opposite direction, and you might need to get some help for that. Come and I will help you, inshallah. But where you want to get to is where you are living in full hope and expectation of your Lord, that good things are happening and you will succeed. And I know if you've been living with anxiety, you might think, wow, that sounds impossible. But I promise you, my sister, that's just because of the way your mind's programmed right now. That's all it's going to show you. It's a bit like, when that if you were looking to get pregnant and you were waiting to see if you were pregnant, all you'd notice, all your mind would show you is everyone who's pregnant at that point. You'd not see anyone that wasn't pregnant. You would only see the pregnant ladies. In the same way, if you were wanting to get married, all you'd see is all the couples that were holding hands together. You'd never see the single people walking on their own, because the mind shows you the direction in which it's been programmed. It needs to be reprogrammed. We need to be able to change the direction of what we're seeing, where we want to go. And that's the power you have. That's the power that you need to tap into. That is the way to create success. It's going to be really hard to do it fighting with that anxiety. You don't want to do that. Because as much as you're trying to go against it and hope for the best, all your mind's ever showing you is all your worst case scenarios. So we want to change that. We want to take control of the direction our mind goes in. We don't want to leave that randomly to waswas or to our worst, experiences that are telling us, well, it happened like that before, it's going to happen like that again. No, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. If you want something different, you have to do something different, right? You can't keep thinking the same way and behaving the same way and expecting the same thing and then hope for a better outcome. If we want things to be different, we have to do something different. And I'm telling you, my sisters, that taking control of the way that your mind is working, so it works for you and not against you, is the answer for that. And that is something that I help my clients with. So, if you want to have a chat about this, we can have a, 20-minute free coaching call. The link is below. Book a call. Let's have a chat. Let me find out a little bit more about what you're dealing with. And, if you want to get more help after that, let's do that. Yeah. But don't live with anxiety. There is a different way to live. There is a better way to live. Otherwise, you're just going to sabotage your life. What you really want to do, and I'll say it one last time, you want to live with full hope and expectation of your Lord, because that is going to take you to success, inshallah. All right, we'll leave it there. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum.